So now we look at the Sharifate of Mecca. So it began, or was founded, in the 10th century, in the year 967 Common Era, and it lasted through to the 20th century. So it lasted almost 1,000 years. In fact, it lasted pretty much 1,000 years. They've been in that area for a long time. Okay, and they occupied Mecca and the regions around Mecca. Yeah? The Hijaz, by extension, but Mecca in particular, the family, the Sharifate family, was there, and that's where they actually had a base, and that's where their power was consolidated. The Najd, as we're going to see later on, is where Al Saud occupied that region, and right next to them were the Rashidi clans, Jabal al-Shamar, and in the corner were the Al-Sabah family. Okay, these are the main tribes. Rubb al-Khali, there's nothing here, it's just the empty quarters, and then Yemen is another region altogether. Okay, so these were the four major regional points in the Hijaz, or in Arabia, and the Sharifate were here. Okay, so the history of these people, believe me, is so fascinating that when you start begin looking into it, many things change. How we perceive Islam, first of all, we perceive Islam in antiquity to have been a static mold. So the people of Saudi Arabia today are Sunnis, they were always Sunni. The people of Iran today are Shia, they were always Shia. Over the centuries and through the millennia, there have been so many changes of regimes, of convictions, of practices, rapid and literally just massive changes. If you just go back a few centuries, the tapestry of Mecca or Medina would have been very different. If you trace back the lineage of Sharif Hussein through his ancestors, we go back to a man known as 𝗃𝙤𝗓 ibn Idris al-Hassani al-Alawi. 𝗃𝙤𝗓 ibn Idris in the 13th century, he established the Sharifate, you could say, dynasty in Mecca. But he was a Shia, and the clan was Shiites. This was a Shia family. Although there was Zaydi, and Zaydism, as we know now, is considered kind of a fifth school of thought. Al-Azhar mentioned it's a fifth school of thought in the Sunni creed, but they are Shia. So they began as Shia. So this family began as Shia, and this was not strange in Arabia. It wasn't strange. At some point in history, to be a Shia was a political persuasion, not necessarily a theological conviction. So they were Shia, and they ruled in Mecca. Now in Medina, their counterparts, because these were Hassanis, they descended from Al-Hassan ibn Ali radiallahu anhuma, whereas their counterparts who descended from Al-Hussein ibn Ali radiallahu anhuma ruled in Medina, and they were Ithna Ashariya, like hardcore Shia, and they ruled at the same time. Okay, so Mecca and Medina in the 13th century was ruled by Shiites. It was a Shia dominion. This is not strange, because you had the Fatimids as well, who was Shia, not far off in Egypt. So that was the makeup of Arabia at that time, and it began with Shia families ruling the two holy sites. During the time of the Ayyubids, so here you have, that's the leadership in Medina, and this is a 𝗃𝙤𝗓 in Mecca, and they were allowed to rule Mecca, Medina. During the time of the Mamluk Sultanates, they were allowed to maintain their position. They retained their position. However, they converted to Sunni Islam. They converted to Sunni Islam, and the Sharifate family in Mecca became Sunni, but also they followed Imam al-Shafi'i's fiqh. So they were from the Shafi'i madhab. Again, had they become successful in World War I, what is known as Saudi Arabia today would be a Shafi'i nation. And I dare say that the Hanbali madhab would have fizzled out completely, because the final stronghold of Hanabila fiqh is in Saudi Arabia, and it has spread around the world through Salafiyya. But this was the final kind of, you could say, region where you had real Hanbali scholars and a Hanbali creed, Hanbali fiqh. So had these people succeeded, you'd have very few people on earth who are following the Hanbali fiqh, at least not at the state level. So later on in the 16th century, Salim I sweeps over and he's the first Ottoman Sultan to wage war against Muslims. Rather than going west towards Europe to conquer and get further territory, he turned towards the east, which was a policy that the Ottomans were never to contravene. It was not allowed to go east against Muslims. So he was the first person to go east. He destroyed the Mamluks. He then went down and he destroyed also the Safavidah. And then he went into the Hijaz. When he arrived in the Hijaz, this family, the family of Sharif Hussein, was there. And at the time, the Sharif was someone known as Barakat II. And he accepted the sovereignty and the leadership of Salim I, but also was the first amongst the Arabs to give him the bay'ah as a Khalifa. So in the history of Islam, the first Sunni Khalifa who was not an Arab was Salim. He paved the way effectively. Okay, and the family of the Sharifan clan were the ones who gave him bay'ah. Okay, so this is important to keep in mind, because oftentimes people say, well, the Ottomans were not legitimate because they were still the Khilafah. No. Those who were of power and authority in that region gave him bay'ah. They acknowledged him as a Khalifa. And from then onwards, the Ottomans became Sultan Khulafa. They took both titles from that moment onwards. Salim maintained them in position. Because of that, he didn't get rid of them. He kept them there. However, there was a dual system now. The Ottomans had an Ottoman governor in the region, and they had the Sharif, somebody who they assigned as the official, you could say, vicegerent. So the Sharif ruled, but there was the Ottoman governor in the region also who had some authority. And so that dual system maintained until the time of Sharif Hussein. In 1909, so this is literally just before World War I, Sharif Hussein then declares himself the king of Hijaz. So the Sharifate of Mecca becomes the kingdom of Hijaz, the Hashemite kingdom of Hijaz. And that continues until the end of the war, 1924. Abdul Hamid gave him the position officially as a Sharif of Mecca, hopefully, potentially, to kind of appease him. But he appointed him as a Sharif of Mecca in 1908. And he said to him that I have fears over the Ottoman Empire. I fear that we don't have a long time left because of the Young Turks, the revolutions, constitutional revolution. So Abdul Hamid confided in him and told him, I don't think we have a long time left. And it is reported that the Sharif Hussein said to him, if things go really bad, you'll always have a home in Mecca. Come to Mecca and reside with us. 1 year later, we know what happened. Abdul Hamid was deposed, the Young Turks took over, and hell breaks loose. And so now, Sharif Hussein actually knew already in 1908 that the Ottomans on their way out, which is why you see 1908, he declares the kingdom of Hijaz. He took the opportunity to grab quickly and to claim it for himself.
Would it be right to say that he had the blessing of Abdul Hamid?
It wasn't, no. Abdul Hamid didn't tell him, I'm giving you the reins of power. He just said to him, I'm entrusting you to be the Sharif on my behalf. I'm making you the Sharif. I'm giving you that position. But I'm letting you know that I have reservations about the Ottoman project. It's not going well. So if anything, you're confiding in the man to help you, right? And he said to him, yeah, come and stay with us. So that's somebody you trust. But that trust was misplaced because, as you can see, Hussein goes back to Hijaz and claims the kingdom of Hijaz. Okay. So he had ambitions from the very early phase. So he was the one who betrayed, effectively, the Ottomans. If you want to point fingers, that finger should point towards him before anyone else. So that is a Sharifate family. And his mother actually was Circassian. So he's half Caucasian, effectively. And this wasn't strange amongst the Arabs or amongst the Turks, because again, as I mentioned, the leading families, the men of repute and authority, they married women from amongst their own ethnic group, but they also had, let's say, an appetite for the Caucasian and Eastern European concubines. So it wasn't strange at all to have sultans or emirs whose mothers were half Eastern European or Caucasian. So his mother was also half. She was Circassian. So was Abdul Hamid's mother. So when we say the Arab revolt, it's not really the Arab revolt. It's the half Arab revolt. because he wasn't, you could say patrilineally he's Arab, his father's Arab, therefore he's Arab, but genetically he is effectively he's half-half. Yeah. So in 1939, we have these, from 1915 to 1916, so on and so forth. Sharif Hussein becomes more ambitious, but he makes connections with the governor in Egypt, Henry McMahon, and they began their correspondence. The famous McMahon Hussein correspondences, in which the British governor is promising the Arab Sharif to give him what he's dreaming of, effectively. We'll give you this and we'll give you that. You have this region, that region. But the language in which he was framing or phrasing his promises was not very clear. He was stringing him along all that time. And because of these promises and these reassurances, Sharif Hussein was now able to openly revolt against the Ottomans. So in 1916, he openly revolts. Okay, so the Arab revolt begins in June or July 1916 from Mecca. So now that he had this promise from the British, he was fully now showing himself for who he was, and he went directly head-to-head against the Ottoman Empire. Okay. So that is where the Arab dream begins for him, and we're going to see where it ends by 1924, where things end up for him and his family. So that's the first family. They are the Sharifan clan, and they had many sons, but the three sons we care about, and the three sons whose legacies still shape and affect the Middle East, are Ali, the one you're looking at here, Faisal, who at some point wanted to rule over Syria, was kicked out, then went to Iraq, and finally Abdullah of Jordan. These three sons of the Sharif had an impact on these major nations in the Middle East. Okay, so all of these regions, Syria for some period of time was under them, Iraq for some period of time was under them, Jordan or Transjordan at the time, and the Hijaz was also under them. Okay, so they had a big chunk of the pie effectively after World War One, but they didn't maintain that piece of the cake for too long. Now we move on to the next one, the Sultanate of Najd.
Welcome to History Yoon, the world's leading online learning platform specializing in Islamic history. To discover the History Yoon mobile app and participate in regular live and interactive seminars and tune in directly from your handset from anywhere in the world. Enjoy instant access to a growing catalog of on-demand streaming content exclusive to the platform, accessible from a variety of devices including desktops, tablets, and cell phones. Connect instantly with our global community of history enthusiasts via our private community forum. To find out more about our online history programs and resources, visit our website today at www.historyyoon.com.